But the wonderful thing about the blues is that the blues has a great deal to do with the circumstantial and vibrant aspects of life. They are what we call the mundane aspects of life. And they're the kinds of things when everybody has to confront. And one of the things I like about being in this country is that life is difficult for everybody. No matter how much money you have, or no matter how much education you have, seems to be that people come to problems, you know. And no matter how much they're fortified, they still have to sing the same kind of song. And this particular song by Bessie Smith, which I kind of pirated from her, is Last Affair, Bessie's Blues Song. The first word is, like I said before, the cutting away of the arm and shoulder from the torso. Disarticulated arm torn out, large veins cross her shoulder intact, her tourniquet, her blood in all white big bands. Can't you see what love and heartache's done to me? I'm not the same as I used to be. This is my last affair. Mail truck or parked car in the fast lane, afloat at 43 on a Mississippi road, 200-pound muscle on her ham bone, another nigger dead for noon. Can't you see what love and heartache's done to me? I'm not the same as I used to be. This is my last affair. $50 record cut the vein in her neck, fool about her money, toll her black train wreck. White press missed a funeral in the same stacked deck. Can't you see what love and heartache's done to me? I'm not the same as I used to be. This is my last affair. Loved a little blackbird, heard she could sing. Martha in her vineyard, pestle in her spring. Bessie had a bad mouth, made my chimes ring. Can't you see what love and heartache's done to me? I'm not the same as I used to be. This is my last affair.
This is the hand I dipped in the Missouri above Council Bluffs and found the springs. All through the days of my life I escort this hand. Where would the Missouri meet a kinder friend? On top of Fort Rock, in the sun, I spread these fingers to hold the world in the wind. Along that cliff, in that old cave where men used to live, I grubbed in the dirt for those cool springs again. Summits in the Rockies received this diplomat. Brush that concealed the lost children yielded them to this hand. Even on that last morning when we all tremble and lose, I will reach carefully, eagerly through that rain at the end toward whatever is there with this loyal hand.
It's called My Son and I. My son is a sculptor. He lives in New York City, which up until January was a city that I hadn't known since I was pretty young. I've lived there since January, and just for a semester. And when I first went to see him in New York City, he'd been there, I don't know, months. And he was about, I don't know, then he was about 22 or something, 23. And he took me around New York because he knew it much better than I did. And he squired me around. He was sort of my daddy. And I mean, our roles were curiously reversed. And I found it interesting. In fact, I found it terrific. It was wonderful to become his friend, not his father. It's a great relief. You know, you allow stuff to one, maybe you can do the other one. And that's what this poem's about. In the beginning of the poem, I say he believes I'm dying. I don't mean that he believes I'm dying the way I am, you know, day by day, sure enough. He thought I had some incurable disease. I did. It was stupidity, but I mean, nobody ever died of that, as all of us can attest to. Some of us, excuse me. We need to weigh out. There wasn't anything seriously wrong with me, but one of my friends had You know, how your friends alarm people. One of my dearest friends had scared the hell out of him. So he was very upset. He is a sculptor, and that enters the poem. My son and I, in a coffee house at 3 a.m., and he believes I'm dying. Outside, the wind moves along the streets of New York City, picking up abandoned scraps of newspapers and tiny messages of hope no one hears. He's dressed in worn corduroy pants and shirts over shirts, and his hands are stained as mine once were, with glue, ink, paint. A brown stocking cap hides the thick blonde hair so unlike mine. For 40 minutes, he's tried not to cry. How are his brothers? I tell him I don't know. They have grown away from me. We are Americans and never touch on this stunned earth where a boy sees his life fly past through a car window. His mother? She is deaf and works in the earth for days, hearing the dirt pray and guiding the worm to its feast. Why do I have to die? Why do I have to sit before him, no longer his father, only a man? Because the given must be taken. Because we hunger before we eat. Because each small spark must turn to darkness. As we said when we were kids and knew the names of everything. Just because. I reach across the table and take his left hand in mine. I have no blessing. I can tell him how I found the plum blossom before I was 30. How once, in a rooming house in Alicante, a man younger than I, an Argentine I barely understood, sat by me through the night, while my boy Teddy cried out for help, and how when he slept at last, my friend wept with thanks in the cold light. I can tell him that his hand, sweating in mine, can raise the Lord God of stones, bring down the republic of lies, and hold a spoon. Instead, I say it's late, and he pays, and leads me back through the empty streets to the Earl Hotel, where the room sours with the mold of old Bibles dumped down the air shaft. In my coat, I stand alone in the dark, waiting for something, a flash of light, a song, a remembered sweetness from all the lives I've lost. Next door, the TV babbles on, and I give up and sway toward the bed in a last chant before dawn.
This next one has a famous line, which I'm sure you'll recognize, the last line in the poem, from Wallace Stevens, who, of course, is one of my favorite poets. This poem is called Cobra Lilies in the Supermarket, and I think the only things I need to tell you are what I already told you, that I studied the piano for many years. And in case you don't know, cobra lilies are carnivorous plants. I wonder as I am driving to the market basket why I have lived my life as I have. The mother of my third husband, a blonde, blue-eyed singer she was, told me I was a crybaby because at the time I was crying. She said, "You should fix up your life and then not cry about it." My own mother said, referring to my fourth husband who left me, "What are you crying for? Buy your own house so that the next one who leaves you won't be able to take your home away." And she too said, "You always were a crybaby." When I cry now, it is usually in anger, but sometimes I still cry in pain. Then I hide myself in rooms where no one can see me. I bought a house, but cannot live in it. My fifth husband says he would leave me before living there. And since he is a nice man, or perhaps it is just that I am older, I didn't cry, nor have I recently been called a crybaby. I still live in other people's houses, listen to their music, live out of suitcases, driving to the supermarket in the rain today, shopping for someone else's dinner. I wondered if anyone ever felt he had a home other than in his head. I was tantalized with the cobra lily sitting next to the oranges and avocados, like a purple clenched fist, unrolling its tongue, but unwilling to speak to me, I thought. When I studied the piano, I always cried at my piano lessons. My teacher stopped criticizing me. I heard that secretly she called me a crybaby. I gave up piano, took up voice instead. Now my lessons are concerts where crying is considered an art. I shout, I speak, I whisper, and at last again I can cry. This time no one taunts me but other crybabies, and when I am alone, I defend myself with poetry. I remember the cry of the peacocks.
I won't tell you who I'm aping in this poem. I'll just tell you the title and let you guess. It's called The Death of the Hired Zimmer. She sat watching the moth at the candle, waiting for Eli. When he came home, she ran to tell him, Zimmer is back. I saw him step out of the woods at noon, look both ways, then head for our place. What can we do? Be calm, Eli said. Was he alone? Only his shadow, a bulge in his pocket. Eli, be kind, she said, and took the market things from his arms. Don't laugh at him. He has a plan. I'll go and see him now, he said. You sit and watch the moon slide through that patch of clouds. He went, came back, too soon, it seemed to her. Dead, she questioned, as he sat down. Drunk was all he answered.
I was reading about old Washington Irving and his problems, and it seems that in the Hudson River Valley a long time ago there are ghosts and all kinds of demons and things running around up there, and you don't get that much anymore. You got ticky-tacks and, quote marks, restaurants and all this. And I thought since there will be a time when we'll know everything about this continent, what will happen to mystery? Where's the guy go for fiction and mystery now? And I was reading about these publishers in the East here, considering abandoning fiction and poetry from their list, that they will only do how-to books and Jaws and things like that. So this is a poem bemoaning the loss of American romance, and it's called The Catskills Kiss Romance Goodbye. After 20 years of nods, he enters a new regime. The machine guns have been removed from the block. Hendrick Hudson's Tavern has slipped beneath the freeway, where holiday drivers rush as if they've seen the Hessian trooper seeking his head. They get their goosebumps at the drive-in nowadays, where the lady in white at Raven Rock is Betty Davis, and Burton apes Major Andre hanging before the haunted bridge. A New England historian has proof that King George wasn't so bad. Gave in to every demand. Donated tea to the American needy. Yankees are just naturally jumpy. Where once stood madmen buttonholing you, gentlemen think of martinis on the train to Mount Vernon. R.I.P., old Rip. Cuddle up in your romance. Your dog Wolf is dead. Your crazy Galligaskins out of style. Your cabbages have been canned. Your firelock isn't registered. Your nagging wife became a scientist. You were keeping her down. Return to the boarded up alley and catch some more winks. Dreaming is still on the house.
Now, I think the last poem, I'll read a rather short poem in memory of Robert Lowell, who was a very good friend of mine for 35 years or so. And this is about, it's an island called North Haven where I go in the summers, and he went, as you'll see, he went once or twice in the poem. And it's called North Haven. I was there last summer, the year after he died. I can make out the rigging of a schooner a mile off. I can count the new cones on the spruce. It is so still, the pale bay wears a milky skin. The sky, no clouds except for one long carded horse's tail. The islands haven't shifted since last summer, even if I like to pretend they have, drifting in a dreamy sort of way, a little north, a little south, or sidewise, that they're free within the blue confines of bay. This month, our favorite one is full of flowers, buttercups, red clover, purple vetch, hawkweed still burning, daisies pied, eye bright, the fragrant bedstraws, incandescent stars, and many more return to paint the meadows with delight. The goldfinches are back, or others like them, and the white-throated sparrow's five-note song, pleading and pleading, brings tears to the eyes. Nature repeats herself, or almost does. Repeat, 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 revise, revise, revise. Years ago, you told me it was here in 1932 you first discovered girls and learned to sail and learned to kiss. You had such fun, you said, that classic summer. Fun had always seemed to leave you at a loss. You left North Haven, anchored in its rock, afloat in mystic blue, and now you've left for good. You can't derange or rearrange your poems again, but the sparrows can their song. The words won't change again. Sad friend, you cannot change.
These happen to have something to do with the war in Vietnam, but they could be about a war. You know, the fact that they were Vietnam is irrelevant. They could be any war. These happened to be on the David Susskind program, and it was a Saturday night, and I was feeling, oh, you know, I should be doing something either really great or something worthwhile, but certainly not watching television. But there I was watching television, and I thought, well, you know, again, this guilt thing, you know, I'll try to make something out of it. And again, I thought I was going to kind of revise these poems or, you know, make them into my poems. But what I ended up doing was really keeping them more or less as the person talking about, you know, his experience had said it. And I guess for me, what's interesting with this is that none of these people who were being interviewed thought these weren't, you know, none of these people thought in any way that they were protesting this war or the war or any war. And yet, instead of like, you know, by what they say, you know, they're all very gung-ho, but what they say is sort of different. This is part of like a whole series. I'll read three of them. How it happened. You see a guy get his lips blown off. You do things you don't want to think of. By the sixth day, I was mainlining all the time, not to feel high. I didn't want to feel anything. There was this hotch outside in the trees. When we came back, the old people were crying. After that, I'd shoot up all the time. The little kids pulling at my knees, crying. You know, the old women had popsicle sticks. They were scraping pieces of a woman off the walls. I could tell that by the breasts in a corner. Even the animals wouldn't come near us. First, you're so scared. Then it's hard to live with yourself. But I didn't get hooked until the hospital in Japan. You understand, they napalmed us by mistake. First, I couldn't feel much. Water won't put it out. Now, I go out in the sun, and I feel fire. You know, I wanted to get off morphine, but they said, why not try unemployment? That's
a supermarket in California. What thoughts I have of you tonight, Walt Whitman, for I walked down the side streets under the trees with a headache, self-conscious, looking at the full moon. In my hungry fatigue and shopping for images, I went into the neon fruit supermarket, dreaming of your enumerations. What peaches and what penumbras, whole families shopping at night, aisles full of husbands, wives in the avocados, babies in the tomatoes. And you, Garcia Lorca, what were you doing down by the watermelons? I saw you, Walt Whitman, childless, lonely old grubber, poking among the meats in the refrigerator and eyeing the grocery boys. I heard you asking questions of each. Who killed the pork chops? What price bananas? What kind of poisons are in the jams? Monosodium glutamate in the margarine? Are you my angel? I wandered in and out of the brilliant stacks of cans, following you, and followed in my imagination by the store detective. We strode down the open corridors together in our solitary fancy, tasting artichokes, passing every frozen delicacy and possessing them, but never passing the cashier. Where are we going, Walt Whitman? The doors close in an hour. Which way does your beard point tonight? I touch your book and dream of our odyssey in the supermarket, feel absurd. Will we walk all night through solitary streets? The trees add shade to shade. Lights out in the houses will both be lonely. Will we stroll dreaming of a lost America of love past blue automobiles and driveways, home to our silent cottage with a TV antenna sticking up into the night under the stars? Ah, dear father, graybeard, lonely old courage teacher, what America did you have when Sharon quit holding his ferry and you got out on a smoking bank and stood watching the boat disappear on the black waters of Lethe? Ten years later, 63, to William Carlos Williams, on hearing of his death, a poem called Death News. I was in India, and a student showed me a copy of Time magazine which said that Williams had died. And I remembered a visit that I had made with Jack Kerouac and Peter Orlowski and Gregory Corso to 9 Ridge Road, Rutherford, where Williams had his physician's practice, baby doctor. And he'd received us. He knew my poetry. He knew Howland had written a preface for it, and for an earlier book that I'd written in Patterson in '51, 6 years before. And he liked Gregory Corso's poetry, and he loved Kerouac. And his wife, who was there, took Kerouac in the kitchen and sipped a lot of wine and talked about the time when Florence Williams and her husband had been young in Vienna with beer gardens and medical students. So this is an account of that time. We all sat in the sofa in the living room and inquired wise words from him. And Williams had had a stroke and was stricken by then. He looked at us young kids and pointed out through the window, through the curtains onto Main Street and said, There's a lot of bastards out there. Walking at night on asphalt campus road by the German instructor with glasses, William Carlos Williams is dead, he said, in accent, under the trees in Benares. I stopped and asked, Williams is dead? Enthusiastic and wide-eyed under the Big Dipper, stood on the porch of the International House Annex bungalow, insects buzzing around the electric light, reading the medical obituary in time. Out among the sparrows behind the shutters. Williams is in the Big Dipper. He isn't dead as the many pages of words arranged thrill with his intonations, the mouths of meek kids becoming subtle, even in Bengal. Thus, there's a life moving out of his pages. Blake also alive through his songs, experienced machines. Were Williams's last words anything black out there in the carpeted bedroom of the gabled wood house in Rutherford? I wonder what he said, or was there anything else left in realms of speech after his stroke and brain thrill doom entered his thoughts? If I pray to his soul in the Bardo Thodol, he may hear the unexpected vibration of foreign mercy. Quietly, unknown for 3 weeks, his death. Now I saw Passaic River and Ganges, one, consenting his devotion, because he walked on the steely bank of the Passaic and prayed to a goddess in the river, that he only invented another Mother Ganges, riding on the old rusty Holland submarine of the ground floor of the Patterson Museum instead of a celestial Indian crocodile. Mourn, O ye angels of the left wing, that the poet of the streets is a skeleton under the pavement now, and there's no other old soul so kind and meek and feminine-jawed and hymn-eyed can see you what you wanted of me among the bastards out there.
Do you know that if you stand in Manhattan, as I did when I was a student at Columbia, and walk in a melancholy manner down Riverside Drive, and in those days you looked across the Hudson River, there weren't all those high-rises, you know. There was only one thing you saw, and that was a sign for spry frying, spry baking. It used to flash on and off across on the Palisades. It became a part of my life. And it took me 30 years to write a poem about it. 30? 40. Jeez. Things are getting bad. 40 years. I'm losing track of decades now. It used to be years. Well, anyhow, I went to the periodontist, which is what happens to you as time goes by. You find yourself in the clutches of people such as periodontists. And this is a poem about periodontics. You know what that is? If you don't, you're lucky. It's the man who says to you, oh, you got gum problems, and starts to chop you apart inch by inch over a period of months. This is called periodontics, and I figured, God damn it, I'm going to get a poem out of this. Periodontics. Am I hurting you, says Yubi. I shake my head, no, for I've learned not to show pain. At the School of Dental Hygiene, where Yubi got her diploma, they teach them not to be put off by a wince or gathering tear, but to stay on the sensitive spot and festina lente, be thorough. I try to think of something else. PC, the initials on the dental unit in front of me. These were Paula's initials. The Chapmans lived on Riverside Drive, obliquely across from the sign for spry. Spry for baking, it said, and blinked off, then on again for frying. The apartment had wall-to-wall carpeting and dark brown furniture waxed so it shone. There was a cabinet with glass doors full of objets d'art, an elephant carved out of ivory, a wooden Russian doll. There was an old wind-up Victrola with hits from Broadway musicals and classics, Gershwin and Tchaikovsky. A bookcase held The Wandering Jew by Eugene Sue. Mr. Chapman had studied for the PhD, but universities wouldn't hire a Jew, so instead he went into business. "How are we doing?" says Eubie. "Okay," I nod, "fine." I call her my Buchenwald baby. With her eyes of cornflower blue that never look into mine directly, but at some view, slightly to the right or to the left, as she travels with the Cavitron. "Oh my God," said Paula, "you aren't even wearing a tie." She looked like a fairy princess in a bright blue gown that showed that her breasts had budded, as Proust would say. I was wearing a suit, but it was brown and tired, and I had no tie. I hadn't thought it was required. "He can wear one of your father's," said Mrs. Chapman. So we went to the prom after all, where Paula danced with everyone else. As I stood by the wall, drinking quantities of pink lemonade out of paper cups, her laughter rang like a chime of bells. I didn't see her for years while I was in the Army. Then we made up for lost time at the movies, in the balcony, on my sofa that converted into a bed, and under the trees. It was summer at night on Riverside Drive. "Spry for baking," said the sign shining above the Palisades. A barge with its warning lights would be going up the Hudson, the George Washington Bridge gleaming in the moonlight against the scudding clouds. "That's it," said Paula, "there." "Are you all right?" says Eubie. I nod. I'm not going to let on. Though I brush after every meal, when she gives me the paper cup with the liquid that's bright red and bitter, and I've held it in my mouth for 30 seconds, pat it out, and rinsed with the mouthwash, and she hands me the mirror, there are always some traces of the plaque that causes decay. Mrs. Chapman didn't approve of me. It took me some time to catch on. He's too, she told Paula, bohemian. She was saving her precious daughter for someone able to provide her with the better things of life, wall-to-wall carpeting and dark brown furniture. Paula wanted to be in the theater, so her mother packed her off to some second-rate school in Boston where they taught it, whatever it was. Actors, I told her, weren't people. Like monkeys or parrots, they could repeat sounds and simulate feelings but had none of their own. Don't call me, she said, I'll call you. She was as good as her word. She called 20 years later. She had just winged in from the coast and was staying at a friend's apartment in Soho. There was a restaurant right on the corner. I recognized her at once, though she was wearing a pantsuit and big glasses with rhinestones, and the skin that used to look like some marvelous tropical fruit was sallow, and the glossy black hair was still black, but lusterless like ink. The expressions that used to be endearing, fluttering her eyelashes, touching her tongue to her top lip, were like the moving eyelids and mouth of a doll. And the shop talk. She kept dropping names of people in Hollywood and Beverly Hills I'd never heard of or wanted to. I said as much. I could hear myself sneering like Diogenes in a washtub. And what did I have to feel so superior about? Where were my screen credits? Did I own a swimming pool? More to the point, Where was the novel I was going to write that would put Proust in the shade? The magic, as they say, was gone, like a song that used to be on the hit parade. But there is always a new song, and some things never change. Not long ago, visiting a friend who lives on Riverside Drive, I saw that the sign for Spry is still there, shining away. Spry for baking. It blinks off and on again. For frying. Then the lights run around in a circle.
I have one about, or rather two poems, about President Harding. I've been thinking about President Harding in recent days again. He didn't come to a good end, I suppose. When I think of what's going on during our presidential election year, and when I think over so many of the people in this century, human beings like the rest of us, who have had some kind of power in their hands and wondered, at least for a moment, what to do with it, I don't think Harding comes out so bad. Two poems about President Harding. One, his death. In Marion, the honey locust trees are falling. Everybody in town remembers the white hair, the campaign of a lost summer, the front porch open to the public, and the vaguely stunned smile of a lucky man. "Neighbor, I want to be helpful," he said once. Later, "You think I'm honest, don't you? Weeping drunk. I am drunk this evening in 1961 in a jag for my countrymen who died of crab meat on the way back from Alaska. Everyone knows that joke. How many honey locusts have fallen, pitched root-long into the open graves of strip mines since the First World War ended, and Wilson, the gaunt deacon, jogged sullenly into silence. Tonight, the cancerous ghosts of old con men shed their leaves. For a proud man lost between the turnpike near Cleveland and the chiropractor signs looming among dead mulberry trees, there is no place left to go but home. Warren lacks mentality, one of his friends said, yet he was beautiful. He was the snowfall turned to white stallions standing still under dark elm trees. He died in public. He claimed the secret right to be ashamed. Two, his tomb in Ohio. The epigraph to the second poem is from the sort of obituary notice that H.L. Mencken wrote about his enemy, William Jennings Bryan. Bryan died suddenly, and he had just eaten a heavy meal and had some kind of attack and died. And the word got around that Bryan, who had once been a very highly respected political figure, and then got mixed up in born-again Christianity and whatnot, and was sort of humiliated by Clarence Darrow at that monkey trial, the Scopes trial in Dayton, Tennessee. Somebody wrote that Brian had died of a broken heart, and Mencken said he didn't die of a broken heart, he died of a busted gut. Well, he died of a busted gut, said Mencken. When I say north of us, I'm from Ohio, from southern Ohio, and thinking of it geographically that way. 100 slag piles north of us, at the mercy of the moon and rain, he lies in his ridiculous tomb, our fellow citizen. No, I have never seen that place where many shadows of faceless thieves chuckle and stumble and embrace on beer cans, stogie butts, and graves. One holiday, one rainy week, after the country fell apart, Hoover and Coolidge came to speak and snivel about his broken heart. His grave, a huge absurdity, embarrassed cops and visitors. Hoover and Coolidge crept away by night, and women closed their doors. Now junkmen call their children in before they catch their death of cold. Young lovers let the moon begin its quick spring, and the day grows old. The mean one-legger who rakes up leaves has chased the loafers out of the park. Minnigan Leonard half believes in God, and the pool room goes dark. America goes on, laughing, and Harding was a fool. Even his big pretentious stone lays him bare to ridicule. I know it, but don't look at me. By God, I didn't start this mess. Whatever moon and rain may be, the hearts of men are merciless. Now, the next poem is another description. It's called A Blessing. Just off the highway to Rochester, Minnesota, twilight bounds softly forth on the grass, and the eyes of those two Indian ponies darken with kindness. They have come gladly out of the willows to welcome my friend and me. We step over the barbed wire into the pasture where they have been grazing all day alone. They ripple tensely. They can hardly contain their happiness that we have come. They bow shyly as wet swans. They love each other. There is no loneliness like theirs. At home once more, they begin munching the young tufts of spring in the darkness. I would like to hold the slenderer one in my arms, for she has walked over to me and nuzzled my left hand. She is black and white. Her mane falls wild on her forehead, and the light breeze moves me to caress her long ear that is delicate as the skin over a girl's wrist. Suddenly I realize that if I stepped out of my body, I would break into blossom.
I'm putting things in order. File this, throw out that, alert the Secretariat, enray each claim and caveat to better serve the cause of alphabet. Throw out this, file that. File this, throw that out. We know beyond all doubt how perfect order reconciles, and now throw out the files. An assertion to end on. Rising to the fall, hoarding accurate, acute remembrances, pronouncing them beautiful, even as the body leans toward subsidence, saying thanks in principle amidst much bepuzzlement, a smile here, a caressing there, flick of an occasional expression, for we are sentenced to the sentence. And now with the coming of spring, coming and coming and coming, and the body pause. This winter, while having stayed north, we earned the rights of spring. Against snow, chickadees learned to fly down, fly up and eat out of our hands. 3 wild, frail bodies, their cold clutch on our fingers, they lighted and were proved right in trusting us. Yes, by far, I guess, the chance to have lived outdoes the need to die. I'll read my 2 poems to my dead wife. This was shortly after she died. First one is a countdown. It's 5/4, 4 stanzas. First is 5 lines, second 4 for 3, 2, 1. And it's free verse. And second is a quatrain and a couplet with internal rhymes shifting about back and forth. And the first one is, I don't ever know how to, we used to say in Latin, genius loci, but I used to say genius loci, now I suppose I anglicized it, as the spirit of the place. Until you died, my love, somehow I had belief in fear of ghosts. Oh, and now, in this lonely place that is so full of you, whereby I am not in my essence over lonesome. Oh, lovelier than if you, what lovelier than if your spirit, the genius of this house, did materialize right here before me. Dear love, always I tried to earn you, but now you are the absolutely given, while I each night lie conscious of my loss. Second is postlude. When something goes, some other takes its place. Maybe a thistle where it had been a rose, or where lace was. Next time a churchman's missile. Erase the face, life says, when something goes. Her deathly such a tangled aftergrowth, by God, I fear I have outlived us both.